soap its hand soap, right? This Palmolive poster is, which is the way the story ends at the very end. At the very end, as she's driving away. Let's list three possible titles or themes or messages here. One, obviously there is the theme of desire and wanting, cravings, desire, wanting stuff. All of the different desires that are a part of the story. The desire, for example, to return home. Let's write that one down. The desire to try and fit in. The desire to be protected when alone. The longing to try and feel a sense of community. All of these will, of course, be important understandings. Number two, the power of language. Notice in the story, to protect herself, she pretends like she doesn't know Spanish. Did you find that interesting? So it's a way for her to kind of hide who she is. Language can be both revealing, but it can also, of course, be a way to hide. Right? Finally, number three, we can think about this notion of the uncertainty that one feels at times and how one can survive that uncertainty. The need to protect oneself. Or, we could say, the way in which human nature can shock, right? Notice she isn't sure about these two guys when they show up with their machetes, but they're there to help her, and they don't even want money for their help. Of course, there's other kinds of observations we can make here at 2b. The conflicts involved, we asked you to think about conflicts. Notice we got a number of them. We got literal conflicts and then, of course, potential conflicts. Are the two guys going to treat her badly? Yes or no. The young boy, of course, is treated badly. But the real central conflict, of course, is this conflict of an internal conflict. Right? Notice, for example, on page 1304, suddenly she's all alone, right? The young boy is left. Read it with me, 1304, second paragraph. Suddenly the countryside was so very quiet. She looked up at the purple sky. The breeze was blowing through the grove, rustling the leaves, so they whispered like voices. Here and there, a light flickered on the hills, living out the solitary life. The campesino, the possible person all alone. This was what she had been missing without really knowing that she was missing it all these years. She had never felt at home in the States, never. Though she knew she was lucky to have a job so she could afford her own life and not be run by her family. Notice the tension, right? Back at home. But independence didn't have to be exile. She could come home. Home to places like these very hills and live here on her own terms. Of course, the irony is that she's going to need help to be able to have her, to have her car fixed and the like. Finally, let's ask about the symbol of that Palmolive poster. What's up with that in 2b? Do you have a sense that there's some kind of symbolism going on in place here? In other words, the way people are kind of set up to desire things they will never ever have. Money, power, and all the things that are associated with it. Okay, let's jump to level 3 and our capacity to try to relate to a story like this. Again, we divide it into two parts, right? We try to relate to other titles and then, of course, to ourselves. Let's think about other titles here first. How do you want to relate this to other texts? Notice, for example, I'll just jump back to earlier in the text for just a second. Go with me to page 1299. For the very first time, as she's looking at all of the fruits at the fruit stand, at the roadside fruit stand, Yolanda slows down and keeps an eye out for guavas, but she sees all of the other fruits that are listed. Notice we have a continuation of a long number of listing of these. You might write down, for example, that Tropics in New York, the Claude McGee poem that we've studied recently, is a similar kind of text where he begins to look at the fruits in New York City and then is immediately reminded of his Jamaica home from which he's displaced. What are some other titles for you that come to mind in regards to being dislocated and away from home, wanting to get back home? Of course, in classic texts, the most obvious classic one we could write down is Homer's Odyssey, right? That text where Odysseus is longing to get back home. You could think about the ways in which what Julia Alvarez is doing in this story is she's playing a game that's a very ancient and a motific game of the hero, in this case heroine, trying to return back home. And the ways in which family either helps that process or does not help that process. What is for you your favorite text about the struggles of somehow surviving or getting beyond your family. Your family tries to keep you in place and you want to somehow escape that. What is your favorite movie about the character, the hero of the protagonist of the movie or whatever, coming back home and trying to come to terms with that? Finally, at 3B, these are obvious questions for us that play right into how we relate personally. Let's ask a couple of them. What's hardest about trying to fit in when you have left a certain culture and you're coming back to it, do you think? What is the hardest thing about that experience? We might ask this question about language as well. What is the most difficult challenge in regards to language and trying to understand language, especially when you come out of a culture of two languages? And what's maybe most unsettling for you about the images of this story? Is it that notion of you're shown things you want, but you cannot have them? And how difficult a challenge that might be. Okay? All right, well, there you go, an introduction to a wonderful little short story that turned into a novel. I hope that you can look it up. Thank you.